that's what people resonate with the most. Out of all the information that I share, they're open to hearing my take on maybe sex education, kink education, alternative relationship styles, because I tell my story so openly, the pieces and parts of it, that they go, ooh, okay, there's something in what she said that I also, my story is a little different, but I resonate with that. And then they kind of belly up to the bar and are like, what else you got?
How did you get to this place of, having this incredible community that is very big, I feel like, in the space of sex and sexuality? Did you always know that you wanted to do this kind of work?
No. No. I'm from deep South Louisiana, little town just underneath New Orleans. I grew up mostly Catholic-ish. I got a lot of mixed messages growing up, messages that were, stay in a relationship, even if it's loveless and you're basically your roommates and it's just for the sake of being in the relationship. And that was my grandparents, who were married for almost 50 years by the time my grandfather passed away, together since they were 17 and I think 19 maybe. And I saw them stay together, but I also didn't ever really see them loving. And so do I believe that there was love there? Absolutely. But as far as the way, they bickered a lot and they were kind of at odds a lot. They had very traditional roles going on. And so I spent a lot of time with them because my mom, on the flip side, was in the military when I was growing up. She's retired now, but single military mom. And at this point, where I am in life now, where we are in life now, she's been married 5 times. So I saw really mixed messages. My sister trying to do things differently as well. She married her high school sweetheart. She's 13 years older than me. And so I really looked up to her. And then as I've grown older, I realized, okay, well, there's challenges in that relationship too. And so I'm just watching these people that were the closest to me struggle and be challenged in these different ways and have different means of figuring it out for themselves. So one just stayed in it and one was willing to work on it, even though it was challenging. And then I, would see my mom that would just trade them out. So, I knew that I didn't want to do my life the same way that I saw it modeled for me. But that's very challenging for people in general to forge a new path when they didn't have it modeled for them. I speak with Jordan and we have some like really tender conversations, and Jordan's my husband. So we have some really tender conversations about how we had the odds really stacked against us to have the lives we have now. We had the odds stacked against us as far as the love that we have and the relationship that we have now. And we certainly had the odds stacked against us as far as what we do as our business and our work, the fact that it's successful in the way that it grows and it moves in the world. And then certainly stacked against us when it comes to us having the community that we have. So it's taken a lot of really conscientious, I will not do life this other way. And I also will not pull the pendulum so hard in the other direction that creates problems in a different way. So it's, growth and development, healing, all of that, certainly not linear. But that was the foundation that I built a lot of my beliefs and things on. And I also went to Catholic school for a portion of my childhood. So from like all through elementary and middle school was at a Catholic school, and then switched over to public school just in time to learn very, very sparse sex education. So my Catholic school days, I learned shame, blame, guilt, make wrong. And then just in time shifted over to here is 0.01% of all that sex education encompasses. You're welcome. Go live life. Here's what an STI is. Here's what pregnancy, here's what will happen if you have sex, STIs or pregnancy. And then this is what they look like, actual birth and STIs. And so don't do sex and don't do drugs. Right. And so like, what? I'm a kid. And so like most, I want to do them both.
Mm-hmm.
And like literally pooling, hormones are just pouring everywhere. Like, how are you going to, and curiosity and the desire for individuation and like a fragile developing ego. It's just a recipe to do all the things you're told not to do, generally speaking. So yeah, that, that's the schooling and how that wound up impacting the things that I I knew that I felt like when I was a kid, I knew some things that were true. My body, pleasure, looking back, I think sweetly and I think fondly of the way that I was with myself before I learned it was bad. Before I
Mm,
learned that I'm not supposed to trust my body. That the desire and the pleasure that I could give to myself, and at the time, it wasn't even sexual. I was a kid. So it wasn't like I was putting sex in my mind or in my heart, or lusting after anyone. And so I look back on that and I think how sweet and I'm almost sorry a little bit. Like I want to apologize, for the things that were told to me and imposed upon me afterwards that had me start to abandon what I knew to be true, and then turn away from myself because that created more harm, I think, than good in the way that I acted and treated myself. I also got the messages that my body wasn't like pleasure wasn't really for me, and that my body was the way that my body was used determined my value, and that I should wait and give it to a man, or they could then, and that it was something that they could take from me, and it actually wasn't really about me, it was more about them in the future family that I was supposed to do with my body or have with my body. So, that's like, I would say the rest of the foundation. Now, all of that didn't equal become a sex coach later in life. It just has given me a lot of perspective. And I think a lot of my story is that's what people resonate with the most. Out of all the information that I share, they're open to hearing my take on maybe sex education, kink education, alternative relationship styles, because I tell my story so openly, the pieces and parts of it, that they go, "Ooh, okay, there's something in what she said that I also my story is a little different, but I resonate with that." And then they kind of belly up to the bar and are like, "What else you got?" And I'm like,
yeah.
"Well, listen, let me tell you what can happen next."
Mhm.
The shit that you hated growing up might make for some really fun kinks, but, I don't wanna jump ahead.
Yeah, you wanna give people the breadcrumbs and let them sort of, like, blossom into it on their own. I would love to share with you that at Openly, we created a dictionary of terms. So you never have to wonder if you're mixing up polyamory and polygamy because they mean two very different things. And what do you call it when you're in a relationship with a dude, but you like to go down on girls sometimes? We've got you covered. I think that language is the most vital part of who we are as a culture. And communicating in our relationships ultimately leads to more successful, wow, Freudian slip, and happy and fulfilling relationships overall. So make sure you get your free copy of the Open Late Dictionary today.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's say the quick highlight notes of what happened after that. I graduated high school. I went to the University of Southern Mississippi. Uh, Graduated. I studied biological sciences and forensics. I thought I was going to go back to grad school. Instead of going to grad school, I joined cruise ships, and I fell in love and joined cruise ships and traveled around the world instead, studying art. So it was just a lost 20 something year old still trying to figure it out. And now I'm a 30 something year old still trying to figure it out. I think that's kind of perpetual. So traveled around the world, visited, I think I'm up to 79 or so countries. So saw all these other ways people loved and all these
Mm.
other ways people related. And I was finally the minority in when I was traveling. And so that gave a lot of perspective and had me push away from my upbringing significantly for a while. And that individuation, that next round of an individuation was challenging. The relationship that I joined ships for originally ended. And it was one of those relationships that I learned everything I will never stand for ever again. in my whole life. And, and at the time, it was the hardest thing I'd ever gone through. And it is why I have the courage, and the substance to the business that we have now. So post breakup, continued to crumble to pieces. I call it hitting a rock bottom and then deciding to hang out at the bottom and roll around in the gravel and just like flail around at the bottom for a while. Um, I turned to food, I turned to sex, I turned to alcohol as coping because I didn't know how to process my emotions, to know how to be with myself and break up. And so eventually I wound up finding my way to personal development, and then personal development mindset, health, fitness, nutrition, manifestation, just kind of like just intro into, the power of now and the code of the extraordinary mind and think and grow rich. I was like just starting to absorb these books and concepts and things, and then realized very quickly that the personal development wasn't translating into sex, wasn't translating directly into the way that I showed up in relationships. It was almost like everything else started maturing, but me in the context of a relationship still felt 14. Like I still
Mm.
felt this, like, I don't know what to do. And at the time, because I think the other personal development stuff had me with a more oriented growth mindset, I decided to lean into studying sex and what's here for me. If I were to even look at it as sexual development, what's there? And that was spurred on reading Sex at Dawn and The Ethical Slut and some other
Mhm.
OGs in
Yeah.
the sex, love, and relationship space, and having my first experiences with both of those with kink and DS and consensual non-monogamy. So just understanding people did this very differently, like did sex and love very differently than I did, and it worked for them, blew my mind.
Mhm.
So from there on, a student and a perpetual student, and hopefully my goal is that sex, love, and relationships and all of the underneath that general umbrella fascinates the fuck out of me. My hope is for my entire life. Because the way humans human, especially when it comes to mating,
Yeah.
you know, is just so entertaining and beautiful. Um, so that's really how that went down. Eventually, I started writing and blogging, sharing on social media. Then I started coaching, and then fast forward in Sex and Love Co. We have a team of people that do it together.
I'm glad that you're enjoying Open Late Podcast in this way. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel so that you never miss one. And check out this next video for more tips, insights, and my expertise on non-monogamy and polyamory. If you want full episodes, you can find them wherever you download your podcasts.